Welcome everyone to the Saints and Pelicans Social Justice Leadership Alliance first all-women panel discussion called Lift Her Voice. The Social Justice Leadership Alliance was formed under the leadership of Ms. Gail Benson, who is the only female owner that owns two professional teams, the Saints and the Pelicans in the NFL and NBA. The players united with this vision of coming together in the community to focus on certain areas, which was police reform, education, civic engagement, and economic reform. They also wanted to have a space to uplift women and their voices. And if any of you have seen this year so far, the Saints have been doing an awesome job with their Say Her Name campaign. But today, we wanted to bring some powerhouse women together to discuss the importance of women in our electoral process. First up, we have Dawn Staley, Hall of Fame coach, and also one of my teammates, winning an Olympic gold medal in Greece. She's currently the head coach for the South Carolina women's basketball team and will be coaching the U.S. national team next year, going for another gold medal in Tokyo. Next, we have Kristen Clark. Kristen Clark is the president and executive director of Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, former head of the Civil Rights Bureau of New York State AG's office as well. Next, we have Jen Hale. Jen Hale is known here to everybody in Louisiana. She's a journalist, author, and she also has a phenomenal organization called Sideline Pass. Currently, Jen is working with Fox Sports, and she covers the NBA and NFL. Nia Weeks is the founder and executive director of She United, an advocacy group in Louisiana that is building an aligned base of Black women who inform, advocate for, and enact a collective policy agenda to address the needs of Black women across the state. Today is voter registration day across the country. We're super excited to have all the women here today to discuss the importance of women in our electoral process, in our society, and beyond. But I'd be remiss without discussing first the passing of the great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what she meant to not only women, but the fight for gender discrimination and equality across the country. Kristen, can you put into perspective about what she's meant? And we're actually living in her legacy right now.
Well, first, thanks so much for having me, Swin, and for creating this space today for this discussion. But it's been a heavy few days. We lost a legal giant. Justice Ginsburg was the second woman confirmed to serve on the Supreme Court, and before she got on the court, she dedicated her entire life and career to tearing down barriers faced by women. And she literally paved the way and opened up opportunities that women didn't have before. Whether you're talking about in corporate workplaces, in sports, she is somebody who literally tore down barriers and was an icon on the court. This is a sobering reminder about the power of our votes and how critical it is that we get out and participate this season.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, for us here, especially with both of our teams, they have been advocating for the fact that you have to be part of the process in order to make a change. Regardless of what side you're on, you have to be registered, you have to be active, you have to vote, not only in the general elections, but also in the midterms. Nia, can you talk a little bit about just women in general? I know your focus is getting women to the polls, getting women into the process here in Louisiana, especially Black women. Why is that so important to you? And you also have a background in law and with civil rights as well.
And it's a privilege for me to be able to work with women because women are incredible. Black women, when we talk about Black girl magic, it is literally magic sprinkled all over. And we are the heartbeat and the cornerstone of everything in this country. I was really privileged to be able to go to the Supreme Court right before COVID hit. And I brought my daughter with me. And we stood on the Supreme Court steps giving a speech that my daughter wrote with me. And we're standing there with locks, and she had a Wakanda dress on. And all of the reason why we were able to do that is because people like Justice Ginsburg ensured that we were. And so we're grieving her loss, but I think the best way to honor her legacy is to continue to move forward with her work. She wanted women to be whole and good in this country. She wanted all women of any presentation to be whole and good in this country. and voting allows us to access that right. And so, the way we honor Justice Ginsburg is to honor her legacy and honor her work.
Yeah, and Dawn, you have been working in the space with young people, but now you're at the collegiate level. You've been advocating for not only young women, but also men just in general on these college campuses to use their voice. What is this moment like for you? And this is college registration week as well. So what's the importance and what are you actively doing with not only your team, but on college campus?
Well, what we're doing in our space, I think this election definitely will involve a lot of young people. They are socially woke for various reasons. I think part of it is the whole social justice movement, but also they're seeing the importance. I mean, it was very important for me, and using my voice to be an advocate for voting is to make sure that we have 100%. On our team, 100% voter registration on our team. So that is accomplished. Our next step is to make sure that they actually vote. Some of our players were registered out of the state of South Carolina, so we have to make sure that they have all of their absentee ballots, deadlines, and we want to make sure that we check off not just registering, but also actually voting on our campuses. Our students, not only student athletes, but our students are very woke when it comes to knowing they can be the determinant of picking our president or picking our local officials. And I'm so happy I'm being a part of their journey and keeping them at a place where not just this year, but in the future. I want them to realize using their voices and using their votes will change America to directly impact them.
Yeah. And Jen, you also have sideline pass and you're working with youth, but you're also in a male-dominated field in sports, which, a lot of us understand that. How do you navigate as you're pouring into these young women who think about, hey, I want to get into sports, I want to get into advocacy work. What are those discussions like, and how have you been talking to them right now with the intensity of social justice and also of getting people to the polls and voting?
To me, the biggest thing is to educate yourself and to be prepared. You mentioned RBG earlier, and to me, one of the many things that sets her apart is how prepared she always was. She was the one writing the dissenting opinion. She had to be, and she thought outside the box. The way she got a lot of those gender equality laws changed. She went and found male plaintiffs because she understood the rules of the game back then. And a jury or a panel of judges might not find in favor of a woman, but they would if for a man. And so she went and found those male plaintiffs that would highlight the cases that would set the laws and set the precedents that now give us so much freedom. So when I talk to my girls, I try to encourage them, be as prepared as possible, be as intelligent as possible, and don't be afraid to color outside the lines, to think outside the box, to approach something in a new way. There's so much change right now, a lot of unrest, but that can lead to really creative thinking and new ways of doing things, which can be very refreshing. So although it's a very difficult time for our youth and our country, it's also a moment of opportunity that I think they can seize if they are prepared. Probably the best advice I got when I was making the transition from going to news to sports, my male boss told me, you're going to have to be better than the boys. You're going to be held to a stricter standard. And he was absolutely right. And so I try to be very honest with my girls about always being overly prepared. There's no such thing as being overly prepared.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point of having, we always, I feel like as women, and especially for me, I know as a Black woman, being younger, my mom and my grandma, when they, first told me, like, look, when you walk into a room, people, the two things they're going to notice is, one, you're a woman, two, you're Black. All right. So you understand that coming in. It's not to say it's an excuse, but it's to say that you're going to have to work twice as hard. And as a young person, it's really difficult to hear. And my thought growing up was, working with young people, I don't want, my nieces or their children to have those same conversations. But unfortunately, we are still here. Kristen, can you talk to us about where we are right now with just women's rights in general and why it's so important for us to be a part of a movement at the polls, because that directly affects a lot of the policies that are being made and laws that could be passed that directly affect us.
Yeah, well, women are incredibly politically active and civically engaged in every corner of our country, especially women of color and especially Black women, which I think is heartening and something we've seen throughout history. Women driving movements for change and transformation. And, right now we're at a moment of national reckoning in our country. We are having important conversations about racial injustice, about police violence. And we look and we see that women are leading many of these marches and protests that are happening across the country right now. To me, it's an important sign that democracy is alive, that we have American citizens who are taking to the streets and are pressing reform and demanding change. The one thing that I am hopeful that we will see is that people will not only fully embrace and appreciate the power of protest, but also the power of the vote as a tool for driving change and reform. We talk a lot about the top of the ballot, and every presidential election year, there's intense focus on who's going to win the presidency. But in reality, those down ballot races have tremendous impact on our day-to-day lives. So for the people out there listening who care deeply about police violence and racial injustice, remember that your district attorney in your community is that elected official who makes that decision about whether or not a police officer who uses deadly force gets prosecuted or not. Remember that elected mayor is the one who often appoints that police chief who presides over a police department that may be in need of change and transformation. In Louisiana, you've got a lot of elected judges who make incredibly important decisions that impact our day-to-day lives. Sheriffs, also elected positions, and they are the ones presiding over jails that set policies on things like solitary confinement. So we have the power to push for change in the streets and in the ballot box. So as we've been saying, right now is the time to take action and make a plan to get ready to vote. As Dawn was saying, there are a lot of people who may need to get absentee ballots and there are deadlines to figure out. If we embrace this moment and this opportunity right now, I think that we will see historic turnout this season, and that really can put us on a path to change and transformation that so many people are crying out for right now.
Yes, and that's so beautifully put, Kristen, because the one thing that we've heard from both our players on the Saints and Pelicans side is, look, we want economic reform. We want to tackle, the justice system, systemic racism, but we also have to figure out who are people in positions to change the policies. And so the education piece is so big. Voting is huge. And again, I just want to put this on people's mind. You can right now figure out if you're registered to vote or register to vote. Just go and text Pelicans or Saints to 26797 right now. Please do that. We want you engaged in this process. But Jen and Dawn, I want to come back to you really quickly because you both work with young people, and especially young women of different race and different backgrounds. I feel like a lot of times when we're having a discussion on women and women's issues, we're not doing it as a collective and bringing everyone to the table so they can hear and engage and understand the things that one another is going with, whether you're from a different upbringing, whether you're a different race. There are so many different issues that are there. How do you address it with the young people that you're dealing with? Jen, I'll start with you first.
Swin, I think it's such a critical point, what you just brought up. Sideline Pass tries very hard to make sure that although we are supporting economically disadvantaged girls the most, we have several activities a year where we bring girls of all financial backgrounds and all racial backgrounds together, because you can talk about these things as much as you want, but I think it's a completely different scenario when you become friends with someone who's different than you. You can hear about walking in someone else's shoes, but when you have that personal relationship and personal contact, it brings it to light in a whole different sense. And I think that's perfect example is why we're seeing so many white players standing up for their Black teammates more so than probably we are in the general population, because they have those friendships and relationships, and they're able to understand and have those conversations more readily. So we really want to promote that type of understanding and also take away the mystery. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just fear of the unknown. If something's different, we shy away from it. So let's make it not different. Let's realize there are way more similarities, way more things that bring us together than drive us apart. And if we embrace those similarities and if we embrace each other, I think we can reach a greater level of understanding. And it starts so often with the young people, because they're more open to new ideas. They're open to thinking differently. And if we can start them on that path, hopefully they won't deviate from it as adults.
And I'll add to what Jen said. You know, sometimes when you move into an area in which, for me, you know, obviously I voted for as long as I could have voted, but you have to empower yourself. Like I've been a part, and I was hesitant of being a part of this women's group that I'm a part of. It is, and you'll see the hashtag Win with Black Women. It's a group of politicians, it's a group of activists, it's a group of lawyers, different professional women that I felt like I didn't belong in that space, because they know so much about politics and how to move voters to register. And I'm like, oh wait, this may not be for me, but I'm in a position where I am helping young people understand how to navigate through this society in our world. And you know, although I was uncomfortable because it wasn't, you know, something that I was used to being a part of. Sports is my arena, and sometimes I like to keep a focus on just that, but it's much bigger than sports. So I have to learn what I don't know in order for me to help young people move forward. So we've had Zoom sessions where we teach our players everything about voting, not just, you know, one way or another. It's voting and what goes into voting and their impact. So I am welcoming new knowledge, because new knowledge is allowing me to help lead some of the young people that I'm in touch with every day, excluding my team. People look to me for some odd reason to help, and I'm hoping I'm using my voice in a way that will get people voting, registering, and also understanding the reasons why.
Nia, I want to come to you because it is so difficult. I know the work that you do, especially when you're talking about Black women and trying to, you know, not only push, we're part of the electoral process. We are there, we show up and we vote. But there's also times when it's a struggle because you're feeling like, who else is with us? What are some of the things that you've come up against and the challenges here in Louisiana, and how do you think it can be better as we move forward?
So that's a lot of questions, but I appreciate it so much. You know, in Louisiana, unfortunately, we don't have the voter turnout when it comes to Black women like there is everywhere in the country. There are 700,000 Black women that are eligible to vote in Louisiana. There are 500,000 Black women registered, but only 157,000 are considered frequent voters. That means there are people who vote outside of a presidential election. And so we have this huge gap of Black women that don't show up. And the reality is in Louisiana, we get the worst of everything good, and we're at the top of everything bad. So we have the highest wage gap at 47 cents to every dollar made by white men. You know, we have the highest maternal mortality rate. And all of that is directly linked to how policymakers value us and see us. And the reality is that they listen to two things, money and votes. and we're in Louisiana, right? And so we've got the votes. Black women are one of the highest voting populations in the state. I was on a call yesterday with 2 of our representatives, and I asked them, I said, what would it look like if all 700,000 Black women showed up to vote? And they were like, the sky's the limit. We could dream about what this city, state, in this country could look like. You impact Louisiana because the Black women are so harshly impacted here. You change that, everyone in Louisiana wins, right? And then everyone in Louisiana wins, everybody in the South wins. The South wins, the country wins. I love what Kristen brought up when she said, at a criminal defense case, as a criminal defense attorney, I always say, by the time a case reaches my hands, everyone who touched it is an elected official. Right? We have the power to impact how we experience the world and how we experience life by putting in policymakers that we don't have to convince about that we're people, that we matter. It's so hard to go to Baton Rouge in DC and I only bring 157 constituents with me. And that's cute, Nia. That's nice. If I were to bring the strength and the force of at least 300,000, 500,000 Black women behind any policy that we're trying to push. Dawn, I love what you're doing so much with your young players. And I love how you said, I appreciated that you said that you didn't see yourself as part of this voting and policy and political process, because that is how most people see themselves. And it's regardless of economics, it's regardless of where you sit in the world. There's just so many conversations about politics and policy that aren't talking to us. And so that's why we're having people fall off participating in civic engagement, because they don't see themselves as part of the equation.
I want to give another RBG quote, and I want you to kind of just tell me what you think it means to you and your form of leadership, and how to get more people to follow. And so this was one of my favorites too, and it talks about the fight for things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. And so it's so powerful because that talks about leadership. Dawn, in your position, how are you as a leader in getting people to really galvanize and also follow?
I think that the biggest thing in being a leader is being able to listen, being able to communicate, and not be one-sided. I think I give young people a place to feel, to express themselves, and I'll ask questions. I'll ask more questions than talk to them, because I think if you can get them talking and being emotional about things, you'll be able to direct them a little bit better. You'll be able to lead them a little bit better. So I lead through listening, and I lead through asking questions, and I lead through just being there for them and giving them that time and space to express themselves, to know things about subjects and to not know as many things they need to know about subjects. And I think that is a powerful tool in allowing them to grow in their process.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think about one of the other icons that we lost this year, John Lewis. And, he was his authentic self every day of his life, and somebody who dedicated his entire career to making sure that everyone had access to the ballot. And that's the kind of life that Justice Ginsburg led to. She dedicated every moment of her career to making sure that women had access to equal opportunity. And so to me, leadership is about being our authentic selves. In the work that I do as a civil rights lawyer, I like to make people uncomfortable. I like talking about the issues that people are afraid to talk about. I like talking about racism and white supremacy because these are issues that have beleaguered our country for far too long. And I feel like if we're going to make progress, then we've got to push people to have hard discussions. And at the same time, voting. I think, this is one of the most consequential moments in our country. And it's so critical that we all get out and exercise voice in 2020 by voting early, voting by absentee ballot, waiting till election day, voting by any method that works for you.
I can jump in now. I will say, the way we do our leadership at Citizen She, citizenship belongs to every Black woman in the state of Louisiana, every Black woman in the country. And so everybody that comes to work with us is on the same space, and I allow them to and direct their messaging to their people. You know, we do a lot of workshops around who are your people, and you get to talk directly to your people. Like I said, Black women are not a monolith. And so we open space for any and everybody, no matter what they have to say, no matter how they feel, they are a part of this movement. And we create ways and spaces to uplift their voice, to shine a light on who they are, what they do, show them how that their piece of life is important to the whole construct of all of these things. We do talk shows talking about Black women's voices, and they get to come on and say what they got to say about policy and politics as it relates to them, even when they don't think it's policy and politics. We write love letters to Black women. We allow artists to come up and be a part of the movement. We create imagery that reflects who people are, and everyone that comes on board has the ability to put their voice in there. You know, everyone's on the same playing field. In order for us to galvanize a movement, we really have to understand the difference, but also weave together those similar experiences that Black women have, that humans have, that women have across the state and across the country. And so we're very flexible in how we open our doors and open our art place. You know, we have space for a Black community, no matter how they present. We have space for allies, no matter where they want to fit in. We say yes more than we say no. We start our days off with encouraging people to be the best of who they are and trusting them that they will do that. We ensure that the people around us have infrastructure and resources to be the best of who they are, and we believe that they will do that. You know, there's this really definitive space for us, especially in the way that I choose to show up in leadership, is that I believe wholeheartedly in the beauty, the brilliance, and the talent of everybody that comes around us. And sometimes people just need to see their place in the rank. They need to be able to be celebrated for who they are. They need to be accepted for their thoughts and their stories. And that's how we are folding all of that in. And like I said, we say yes more than we say no. And everybody has a place. Everybody has a voice.
I love that. And I think for us here at, you know, the Saints and Pelicans, I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues, Shanika Dabney Henderson, and also Alicia Bouchard Sheridan. We, all three of us, co-chair this SJLA with some of our other colleagues, interacting on a daily basis. Everybody's trying to do their part, because we understand as a collective, we can really move the needle. A lot of time the work that we're doing, whether it's on college campuses, it's with pro teams, it's doing the grassroots movement, a lot of times that work doesn't always get recognized, but it's important because it directly affects the communities and the places that you live in. And we hear it all the time. Our athletes get it. Oh, you guys have money, you don't have those issues. And the reality is no, everybody has to vote, because you may not have the issue right now in your area, but your family, where you come from, there are still issues throughout the country. And so we're just really humbled to actually be a part of this SJLA here in New Orleans, and to understand that there's so much work still to be done, but we can collectively move forward with great leadership and people who are humble and selfless and understand the importance of really being a collective. So want to encourage again, we want to put that voter number out there. I'm a voter. We partner with them. You can text Pelicans or Saints to 26797 right now. You can register to vote, or you can find out if you're registered to vote. Early voting is going to happen across the country. We encourage you to do that. Also, absentee ballots. If you can't be there, make sure you get your ballots in early. We understand how the mail system is happening right now, and you don't want your things to get caught up in, with the mail or for it to be delayed. So there are dates that are there, but this week we celebrate and try to get college students and get people registered to vote. And we also want to pay tribute to one of the best justices that have paved the way, not only for all of us, but also I think her descent and her legacy will be there for years and years to come. So rest in peace, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We appreciate you. Ladies, I just want to thank you all for joining us for this Social Justice Leadership Alliance discussion of Lift Her Voice. Your voices are impactful. It's important in our society. Thank you all for taking the time. We want to encourage everybody to please also go out there and vote. Another easy way, we talked about it earlier. I am a voter. Both the Pelicans and Saints have partnered with them. It's easy. Just text Pelicans or Saints to 26797. Again, text Pelicans or Saints to 26797. Thank you all for being here.